Everyone said the river was broken, but the river wasn't broken. The river was listening. "Hi there, little one. I'm Cozy Bear. Tonight, in a valley where a river has gone very still and very quiet, something is happening that nobody quite understands yet. Curl up close, little dreamer. Here we go. There is a valley that sits between two gentle hills like something cupped in two hands. In the spring, wildflowers cover the meadows on either side. In summer, the hedgerows grow thick with berries and birdsong. In autumn, the whole valley turns soft amber and copper and deep red, and the light comes in low and golden through the gaps in the hills. And through the middle of all of it, always the river ran. It had been running for longer than anyone could remember, over smooth stones, under leaning willows, past the old mill at the bend and the stepping stones where children had crossed for generations. It made a sound that the people of the valley had stopped hearing, the way you stop hearing a clock that has always ticked. Not silence, just permanence, just the background of everything else. And so when it stopped, one quiet morning in late autumn, with no warning and no explanation, the whole valley noticed all at once what it had taken for granted all along. It didn't drain away, it didn't freeze. It simply stopped moving. The water was still there, clear and cold and deep, but it sat without flowing, like a mirror laid between the hills. The valley creatures came to the bank one by one and stared. The heron stood very still at the edge and waited, which is what herons do even in normal circumstances, but now they seemed to be waiting for something specific. The otters arrived, slid in, felt the stillness, and slid back out again looking puzzled. Even the water beetles, who were usually too busy to notice anything, paused on the surface and seemed to consider. "It stopped," said a young otter named Flint, stating the obvious with great certainty. "Thank you, Flint," said his grandmother. "We had noticed." Everyone, it turned out, had an opinion about what had happened to the river. The oldest heron said it was tired. It had been flowing for a very long time, she said, and perhaps it simply needed to not flow for a while. A family of ducks said it was lost, that it had forgotten which direction was forward and needed to be reminded. Flint the otter said there was definitely a blockage somewhere upstream and volunteered to find it, which was mostly an excuse to go exploring. The water beetles said nothing, because water beetles rarely commit to an opinion without considerable evidence. And an old grey heron who had stood at this exact spot for more years than he could easily count said simply, "Perhaps we should ask it." Everyone looked at him. "Ask the river?" said Flint. "It's worth trying," said the heron. "We've tried everything else." The heron's name was Aldric. He was old enough that his feathers had gone from grey to almost white, and he moved with the particular unhurriedness of something that has decided it will arrive when it arrives. He walked to the very edge of the bank and stood with his feet in the still, cold water. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, very softly, as if to someone who might be resting and he didn't want to startle, "We noticed you've gone still. We miss you moving, but we're not here to tell you to start again. We just wanted you to know we're here. If there's something you need, we're listening." The river said nothing, but very slightly, almost imperceptibly, the surface moved, just a ripple, small as a breath. There and then gone. Aldric nodded slowly. "All right," he said, "take your time." That night, the valley was quieter than usual. The creatures settled along the banks, not because anyone had suggested it, but because it felt right. The way certain things feel right without needing to be explained. The otters curled together at the water's edge. The ducks tucked their heads beneath their wings and floated, impossibly still on the still water. The herons stood like pale pillars in the dark. And the river began very slowly to remember, not in any way anyone could see at first, just a slight darkening of the water near the bank, a faint sound, low and continuous, like a thought forming itself into it. The river remembered the mountains it had come from, cold and high and clean, the snow melt that had been its beginning. It remembered the valley it had always known, the willows that trailed their fingers in it, the stepping stones worn smooth by generations of careful feet, the mill wheel it had turned without thinking for longer than the mill could remember being built. It remembered where it was going, not urgently, just remembered. The sea, eventually, always the sea, the long, patient journey south. And remembering, it began to move. It started at the edges. A thin line of current close to the bank, almost nothing, almost imperceptible, but moving, then wider, then deeper. Then, with a sound so familiar that every creature on the bank would, something unlock in their chests, just hearing it. The river flowed, not rushing, not making up for lost time, just flowing the way it always had, steady and unhurried, and entirely itself. Flint the otter was the first one in. He dove beneath the surface and let the current carry him, just for a moment, just a few feet, and came up shaking water from his whiskers with an expression of absolute relief. "It's back," he said. "It never left," said old Aldric. "It was here the whole time. It was just still. But now it's flowing again." "Yes," said Aldric, "now it's flowing again." Later, when the excitement had settled and the creatures had gone back to their usual business of being creatures, eating and sleeping and going about their lives along the banks. Flint sat beside Aldric at the water's edge and watched the river move. "What happened to it?" Flint asked. "I don't know exactly," said Aldric. "Do you think it was tired?" "Perhaps, or perhaps it needed to be still for a while before it could remember how to move." Flint thought about this. "That seems like a strange way to work," he said. "Does it?" Aldrich looked at him. "Have you never had a day when you couldn't quite go? When something in you just needed to be still before it could figure out what came next?" Flint was quiet. "Yes," he said. "Actually, yes, I have." "Everyone has," said Aldrich. "Everything has, even rivers." He looked at the water moving past them, steady and familiar and entirely itself. "The still times are part of it too," he said. "Not the opposite of flowing, just part of the same river." The valley settled into its nighttime self. The water moved. The willows trailed. The old mill turned slowly in the dark, and along the banks, in their nests and dens and careful sleeping spots, the creatures rested, to the sound they had almost lost and found again. The river flowing as it always had, as it always would. There are times, little one, when something in you goes still. When the usual movement stops and you don't know why, and it feels like something might be wrong. But sometimes the going still is the river remembering, gathering itself, finding what it knows, deciding what comes next. The still times are part of you too, not broken, not lost, just quiet. Just listening, just you being still for exactly as long as you need to be. And then, when you're ready, you'll flow again. You always do, you always will. The river knows, and so do you. Good night, little dreamer. Sweet, sweet dreams. And that, little one, was tonight's story. Cozy Bear hopes you have the most wonderful, magical dreams tonight. See you next time. Good night.